Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. Welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast. Before we get started, I do owe everyone a bit of an apology. We've had a little bit of an extended absence behind the mic, which is it's my fault. It's Mother Nature's fault. I don't know where we want to lay the blame, but we had a little bit of a hurricane come through Florida, and it threw our schedule a bit off, but we're back at it tonight, and hopefully, as long as the weather cooperates the rest of this year, we shouldn't have any days off. Now, as usual, I am joined by my percipient co-host, Chris Rasick. Appreciate you being here tonight, man. And today we're going to be discussing 7 habits of highly effective Amazon sellers. Now, of course, we can't cover all of the habits that you might need as an Amazon seller, but I do think there are some powerful habits that you can take away from this episode and at least have in your toolkit or add to your current toolkit to become an effective or a more effective Amazon seller. But before we dive into these 7 habits, we want to welcome back to the show Jeff Schick, Esquire, for a little segment that we've started known as the Amazon Law Review. All right, so back for another round of the Amazon Law Review. We've got Jeff Schick. Jeff is remote this time around from the far reaches of India. Jeff, I know you were there to speak at a conference, right?
That is correct. So while I'm here speaking at a conference, my team is hard at work with Q4 issues. We've got suspensions, IP claims going on in the States, and then I'm over here lecturing about preventing all those things, and of course, having an interesting time. So, over here in New Delhi, India, right now.
Ah, very cool. India is on my bucket list, so I definitely want to get over there. I hope that you get a little bit of time to go out and sightsee before you have to come home.
That is tomorrow. So tomorrow is our sightseeing day. So.
Oh, nice. Well, I know you've got a bit of a bombshell to drop tonight, but before we do that, I'd like to just briefly touch on something that you actually posted last week about the Nike TROs, and kind of maybe give everybody a really quick update on what's going on there.
All right. So good news is that Nike has, fixed the issues. What they had done is they're perpetually trying to clean up the sales channel. And by clean up the sales channel, I don't mean remove unauthorized sellers. They don't even use that vocabulary in their lawsuit. They do use the term unauthorized users of Nike trademarks, and that's because that means counterfeiters. So what they've been doing is targeting counterfeiters. In fact, as they believed, most of the counterfeiters within their lawsuit reside in the People's Republic of China. This is not a targeted, and this is not an enforcement effort. This is not any conspiracy to remove sellers from selling Nike products that are legitimate and lawfully acquired. But what it is, an effort is to get rid of people selling counterfeit Nike products, fakes. So
awesome.
So as of today, that's been resolved for my clients. So anyone that reached out to me, we took care of it for them, and they're, as long as they supplied proper documentation, could prove that it was authentic, they're back in business.
Wow, that's killer news, man. I kind of like Nike's way. I like the way that they go about this. I know that they don't want inauthentic items, anywhere, and especially Amazon. Of course, that could hurt the brand, over time. I know that they kind of want to control their supply chain a little bit more. They want to be more direct to consumer, and they're getting out of some of the brick and mortar, shops, but they're not going after the legit third-party sellers. And if all brands would go that route, I'd actually kind of like it.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're doing what responsible brand owners would do, which is going after people selling counterfeits. And they're doing what responsible business partners do, which is not going after people who sell their products, even if they're not, quote unquote, authorized by the brand. So, and there seems to be no indication right now that they're planning on going after sellers for, selling retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, Nike.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I know we can only speculate, but I wonder, like how much of that was maybe in the agreement where Amazon and Nike kind of broke up their first party relationship, or if it was even discussed or anything like that.
You mean as far as like who selling counterfeits or enforcement, or what? What do you mean?
Or like it being okay that third party sellers sell legit Nike branded items. That way it wasn't just a complete annihilation of a massive brand.
I don't know. I'm not certain that Amazon would want to put that in writing, to be quite honest. As much as we want to think that they would care about that, I'm not sure that Amazon would make that a priority for them. And I can't see a brand giving up that level of control over their brand going forward. So I don't know that that's the case. I think, but of course, what we are seeing is them going after counterfeit sellers, which they've been doing for years. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember they had a lawsuit against counterfeiters. The first big one that I remember was back in, I want to say it must have been June of 2020. In fact, I did a video on it, if you remember, where I went to a Nike store because, people were speculating that the OA or RA for Nike was dead. And I went to a store and I used my sales tax exemption and they let me buy, products sales tax free and I told them I was going to sell them on Amazon. They said, come back and you can buy 5 of each pair. And that was it. So,
Yeah.
and it seems to still be the case. Store managers are still welcoming Nike sellers or Nike resellers into their stores.
Nice. That's great. Well, so I don't take up too much of your time because I can only imagine what time it is in India.
It is 2:56 in the morning, but I thought this was important, so I wanted to share it with you.
So you said you had a bombshell you wanted to drop. Let's go ahead and lay it on me, man.
All right. So while I was here, I obviously I was speaking at one of the conferences here, and after I was speaking, I had 2 gentlemen approach me, and they said they wanted to talk. And they motioned. They're like, "Let's go talk in the hallway. We think this is interesting." I said, "Okay, sure." And lo and behold, they work for Amazon, and they had they were Amazon employees, and they wanted to share, just know who I was and just share some insights with me, and they just thought it was interesting. So they they shared quite a few little tidbits. I was able to talk to them just to learn, well, what's the process like? So to put it in perspective, they didn't just work for Amazon. One of them was on the what apparently appears to be some sort of hybrid seller performance seller support team, where he actually handled everything from inbound cases on missing products or feedback removal, all the way to cases about reading appeals and listing suspensions and things like that. The other agent was a much higher level seller's performance representative, and so he was dedicated seller performance, and he said he handled very major cases when there were major investigations that had to be done. That one that gentleman was obviously very interesting to talk to, but I'd say the more interesting person to talk to was the person who was the hybrid seller support agent, and that's because the information he shared. And I'll preface this with it. He voluntarily shared the information. There was no, didn't ask him to share anything that he wasn't supposed to share. So he just was trying to provide educational value, and so I think it was interesting. So I was able to ask him questions about how the process works and what things look like. And one of the things that we talked about is I said, so I said, let's take this fictional case that you've got, somebody puts in a feedback removal request. I was like, you've dealt with those? And he goes, of course I have. I said, what happens if they said that the product was fake and the seller's asking for that feedback to be removed? He goes, well, we would have to verify why that's the case. I go, so what do you mean by that? He goes, well, if somebody wants us to remove feedback like that, we're probably going to deny it. But even more so, I'm probably going to ask my manager to investigate it, because if a customer is writing feedback that the product's fake, I would want to make sure that the seller's not selling fake product. I go, that's really interesting. He goes, yeah. And if we found out that they were selling fake product, then that would mean I'd escalate it to what they call the TRMS team, which is one of the actual seller performance investigators, so that way they can make a final determination. I go, so what does that look like? He goes, well, we just send them an email and say, here's this seller with their seller ID, and we think they should be suspended because of this. And then off the email goes, and then somebody else takes over the case from there. So it goes to demonstrate, I've been talking a lot over the past few years. I always say, for instance, especially in Q4, you don't raise little issues in Q4. So, I'm missing one unit of product that's costing me $4. Yeah, probably not going to open a ticket for that, but even more so now, because you open the ticket for the $1 that's missing, and he starts doing, that investigator starts doing some research, and they're like, oh, well, you've claimed, these other units that were missing. And then they start to, build a pattern, even if it's not true. And you end up with that dreaded 72-hour notice or the notice of suspension. And at the end of the day, it was self-inflicted because you asked them, you brought it to their attention.
Interesting. I wonder, that makes Amazon a little more scary, but again, it's not like we're seeing a ton of people getting suspended for, trying to get feedback removed. I wonder, did he mention like how often it turns from, asking for something to be removed into a much larger scale investigation or anything like that?
He seemed to say that he made it sound like that was very, very few and far between. The vast majority of sellers are good people. And he was very adamant that, sellers are, they don't necessarily view them as just a number, and they actually do view them as, business partners. And so that was just, most of the time they never find anything that goes wrong, but every once in a while they do find it. And that's when they, they have to take action.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a solid thing. It might scare a seller here and there who's listening, but on the other hand, it seems that Amazon actually wants to have a trustworthy marketplace, which is not only good for the customer, but in turn, it ends up being good for the seller, especially if we can get any bad actors off the platform.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, every bad actor on the platform makes it harder for, honest, good people to do business on the platform. Because every scam artist that comes up with the next great Amazon scam scheme of how they're going to steal money from Amazon or game the system or mess up reviews or anything like that just makes it harder for, people like you and me to sell on the platform and make money, because now we've got extra rules, extra burdens, and it's just more difficult. So anything that they can do to get rid of those types of people is obviously a welcome change.
Absolutely. While I've got you, and I don't want to take too long because I know it's late, but while I've got you, I'm curious if you have any thoughts about maybe what's going on at IND4, or if you've heard about it, but tons of people seem to be just sending in inventory into a black hole. So one, have you heard about it? And two, is there any recourse for sellers?
I have heard about it, and obviously there is recourse for sellers in the form of reimbursements. If Amazon loses your inventory, they, per the business solutions agreement and all the policies, they have to reimburse you for it. So I recommend, if sellers want to do it themselves, you can do it yourself. If you want to use a reimbursement service, for the next go around at it, then by all means, sign up for a reimbursement service. If that still doesn't work, then, we've started, getting involved in these cases as well. And so that's, something that we're able to help some of our clients with too. And so that's just, it's something that we've been unfortunately having to deal with, because it'd be nice if Amazon just did it right from the beginning, so we didn't have to deal with it. So.
Yeah, such a large machine. It's hard for every cog to be in the right place all the time.
I think if I keep making it expensive for them, they'll fix it.
I hope so.
Because at the end of the day, the people that are rejecting the invoices and saying that store receipts aren't good enough is actually quite interesting. They get paid, as I learned, $2,500 a month, US dollars, and a month in India, which is an extremely good salary for someone living in Hyderabad. Yeah. But when we send it to Amazon's legal teams and it's costing them $2,500 a case, yeah, so they're not going to want to do this too much longer. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. That's awesome. You're doing a heck of a service. So, like I said, I don't want to keep you too awful long. Guys, if you want to learn more about what Jeff does, Jeff is an attorney. He handles Amazon sellers. Make sure to check out jeffschick.com. He happens to be my attorney that I keep on retainer, and everything that we say off air has client attorney privilege, just so you guys know. But thanks so much for coming on again for an episode of the Amazon Law Review, Jeff. I appreciate you taking the time and staying up so late in India to do that for me.
absolutely. Thank you for having me on here. I'm glad to share the information. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Always a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Back to the 7 habits of a highly effective Amazon seller. The very first one is always be learning. And I know that this is probably something that's fairly close to both Chris's and I's heart. We're both we seem to be habitual learners. It's I don't know. It's almost a sickness, I would say, between books and podcasts and blogs and things like that. It certainly can divert the focus a little bit. But we know that selling on Amazon is not necessarily rocket surgery, but you're always able to pick up a new skill, a new way to think about the platform or why Amazon might be doing something, or your ability to read between the lines of what I like to call Amazon speak. There's always a new strategy or tactic that you can pick up for sourcing, or if you've been doing it long enough, there's something might just stick out to you that may not have stuck out previously. You can always learn something about watching your bottom line, about cash flow, or some other strategy that can be helpful. And the reason why this is important is because even 1% gains will compound on a long enough timeline. I saw an interesting email today from, I always forget the guy's name, but he runs BuyBoxer. BuyBoxer is a very large seller on Amazon. And I want to say in 2019, they did something like $68 million in sales on Amazon. And he shared what their net margin was. And I want to say it was something, I don't know, I want to say 12% or something like that. And then the very following year, their sales dropped from that 68 million down to something like 53 million. But his margins increased by a factor, by a fairly large number. And he said that even though our sales were down because our margins were higher, of course, his tax bill to the IRS was higher that year also. And it was a good perspective shift, because I think a lot of the times when Amazon sellers are talking about, next year I'm going to level up, it's not necessarily leveling up the profit margin. It is, I'm always going to level up I'm going to be a 7-figure seller. I'm going to do 3 million. I'm going to do 5 million. But you might actually be able to make the same profit if you learn to cushion that margin a little bit. So I thought it was and I got his numbers totally wrong. So if he's listening or if someone fact checks me, I apologize. But it was kind of a good mindset shift to read that.
Yeah, it's always be learning, and you talk about like incremental gains or marginal gains. I'm always trying to. I read and I study and I learn because I want to get better. I want to be a better entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
If I could go to bed and wake up the next day a better entrepreneur than the day before, those are essentially those marginal gains or incremental gains. And it might have been a couple episodes since we've mentioned James Clear, so we're certainly due. But the best example that I can remember of getting 1% better and the impact of compounded incremental improvements is that story that he told in Atomic Habits of the British Cycling Club.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was blown away when he told that. Basically, like in summary, if you haven't read the book, not only should you, but I'll give you a summary of it. Essentially, like the British cycling team was like historically bad. Like it was a joke. I think it was something they like over the course of almost 100 years, they had exactly one gold medal in cycling, and then they had 0 Tour de France wins, which is the main cycling tournament. They had 0 wins over 110 years, right? And it was so bad that even certain bicycle companies refused to sell them bikes. They didn't want their name associated with the British cycling team. That's how bad it was. So in 2003, they hired a guy named Dave Brailsford, and he was hired with the intent of changing the mindset and turning everything upside down and pumping new life into the British cycling. So it's really interesting what he did. I won't even get to everything on the list, but he basically every single day they looked for small improvements that they could make with the cycling team, and it was no detail was too small. I mean, we're talking like they redesigned the bike seats. They tested massage gels to see which one had better muscle recovery for their athletes. They used heated shorts to try to maintain the temperatures in their leg muscles. Of course, there were biosensors. They even hired a doctor to teach them how to properly wash their hands so they could avoid getting ill. The pillows and mattresses to get the best sleep, and the one the one example of how how anal retentive they were about this. They even painted the inside of their trucks that they transported the bikes. They painted the inside white so that they could spot dust better and to keep it from deteriorating the equipment. So that's how. But it was of course it was every single day, and that's the big thing about Atomic Habits is it's all about the process, and it's about consistency and the steps. It's not the goal itself, it's the steps getting you there and the consistency in the steps. So of course the big payoff on the story is in 2008 at the Beijing Olympics, they won 60% of the gold medals that were available in cycling.
Oh, so that's crazy.
5 years after this guy's hired. That's how far that team went in 5-year period. And then a member of the British cycling team, his name was Bradley Wiggins. He won the Tour de France that year. So that's how impactful 5 years of incremental gains was. And I was blown away when I read that part of the book. Like I said, it was just, but what a great example, real world example of how important just minor improvements can be over a long enough timeline.
Yeah. And the timeline is not really as long as you might think it has to be, I mean, it only took them 5 years to go from, essentially, one gold medal since 1908, no wins in 110 years. It only took them 5 years to get back to a spot where they were absolutely crushing it. That's right. Crazy to me.
And think about it, because you that much of a drought, to be that bad, the cycling team, you almost assume that when you bring somebody in, it's almost like the next generation of riders that are going to have to come in. You almost think it's like an attitude shift and like a recruitment kind of thing of younger cyclists, and trying to groom them as they get older. But only 5 years. These are the same guys. A lot of the same guys had to be on that team. There's no way they turned over the entire roster in simply 5 years. So that's proof of the improvements themselves. Rather than I mean, you can't just there's only so much you can do to make them, more talented,
Oh yeah.
So,
and now this is just a bit of an aside, okay? But there is a member of the British cycling team now, and I've caught him on social media here and there. His name's Robert Forsterman is his name, and on social media he goes by the name Quadzilla, because the dude has, these massive quads on him, and I saw a video of him putting out like 700 pounds of torque or something when he was out of the starting gate on his bicycle. It's insane to watch. It's nuts.
I think I've had cars that couldn't push that much.
Right. Now, what's the second rule or the second highly effective habit?
This one might hurt a little bit, but the second one we want to cover is to seek and welcome constructive criticism. Basically, if you can gather people that you respect and ask them to offer feedback on your process and goals and ideas, business strategies, et cetera. If you kind of open up, peel back the curtain and let them take a look, and then take what they have to say without offense and implement, what the improvements that make sense to you, you'll be able to grow a lot faster. It's that extra set of eyes, it is pretty important. The natural segue into this is networking. That's we've talked about that before and how important that can be. This can be an isolated business if you let it. It doesn't lend itself to being around your peers too much, and unless you see another reseller in the aisle, and that doesn't always go well in the store. But
No, I've
so
had
as far
that
as
go
like,
bad.
yeah. So it doesn't. It's not a natural thing to be able to talk to peers. I've said that before. That's why I love being able to talk to you, and even if we didn't record this, I'd still want to chop it up with you. There's a ton of value on a personal level, even. Hopefully we're helping the audience too a little bit, but
Yeah, I
if
hope
there
so.
wasn't, I won't lie and say there's some self-interest in it too.
Yeah, I think I don't know. This is one of the really important ones to me, and I know that you have a mastermind, and I want to get. I know we've talked about it before, but I kind of want to rehash that a little bit. And I've got people that I do this with as well. I'll ask you for your opinion. I've got people who I know are smarter than both of us by a long shot, that I'm lucky enough to be able to chat with, and I've just asked straight out, hey guys, punch some holes in this. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I'm doing right. I've gone as far as, asking, what my weaknesses are, what my strengths are, and one of the things that I have always asked is, what do you think my habit stack is, or my strength stack? I'm sure you're familiar with Scott. I can't remember his last name, but the creator of Dilbert, and he talks about having a skill stack to be able to kind of set you apart a little bit. Now I've asked, what people thought my skill stack was, so that I could make sure that my idea and their ideas were similar or the same, and it's been incredibly constructive. Especially if you can take it from people you respect, and you aren't gonna get your feelings hurt by it. But I'm curious, like with your mastermind, how has that helped? And
Yeah, it's been great, and it continues to help me improve in even new ways. We've been doing it for I know it's definitely more than a year, not quite a year and a half, but we've definitely had an anniversary, and we meet every single week, and we're actually setting new records for length of meeting recently, which it wasn't part of the plan. Like I don't want them to run 3 hours every time, but we're really, they're 3 hours long because we're really getting into some constructive stuff, and a lot of people are learning things where you'd be hard pressed to figure out where you would get that education elsewhere. But it's been I used BOPUS, buy online, pick up in store, as kind of like the theme of the mastermind. That was kind of like that was the place setting that we used for it, because I wanted to, not only is that a strategy that I like a lot, I think it's an emerging sourcing method. I think stores were forced to adopt it. Through the pandemic, it was becoming a thing before, and then kind of ramped up with the pandemic. And but it can be a very effective strategy as far as sourcing. So I kind of use that as the vehicle to get us there, and we successfully gathered a diverse group of sellers. there's there's a part-time seller. He's a teacher and he does this part-time. There's a newer seller, but she does a really nice volume, especially based on the experience that she has.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. I'm a total hack. So, and then, and then we have two very experienced sellers. One does a very high volume and he still does it part-time. And then there's a high volume seller that does it full-time. And that's,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's about as good a mix as I could have scripted. And it's a great place, and we've gotten to know each other, so there's certainly familiarity, which helps us open up and but you learn the tendencies, especially because we're sharing leads, that's still part of the group. We get
Mm-hmm.
together and we talk about, certain stuff and pain points and, whatever's giving us a headache at that time. We'll work that sort of stuff out, but we're also sharing leads. So, you can kind of see what people go for, and we're open with each other. And it's like, nah, you know what, I'm going to pass on that. I'm not getting out of bed for, $4 profit when I could probably only get a dozen or so, so it's a good mix. It's really interesting. And then like specifically the reason that they're running 3 hours now, the last couple of weeks, is we set up experiments with tactical arbitrage.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so I finally decided, there's a couple people that when the transition happened with 3 Colts, their TA just went haywire and they're not getting any results. And so much so, and they're even thinking about like quitting using it and, finding an alternative. And there's all that sort of talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just from a couple of them. I haven't had issues, and I've been able to manage, everything that 3 Colts has changed and rolled out. And then I found ways to get back to the efficiency that I'm used to with TA, and I'm a full proponent that even the 3 Colts version of TA, it's still an incredibly valuable tool to my business. Right. And I've maintained that, and not that I haven't, thrown out a snarky meme about them here and there. I've had, there have been frustrations, but overall, it makes me so much money. I'm not considering moving away from it at all. So,
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, so in an effort, I was like, you know what, let's just finally run an experiment. Let's run the exact same scans, and we'll each use our own settings, as far as, cost per pound to ship and if you put your prep fees and, just do it how you normally do it, to give us a good sample. But the data, the starting point will be exactly the same. So, we ran a Walgreens sale page, so we just, and the hyperlink was the exact same for all of us. We ran the BOGO buy one get one free Walgreens page, and then I took 10 storefronts and we all extracted the ASINs from the exact same 10 stores and then ran that through a reverse search. And then
Nice.
So we did it the setup was the 1 week, and then the second week we went over. We started the review. There's still a little bit of work to be done, but we started the review process, and we're learning things about even setup. Like the one Walgreens search, the one member of the mastermind had the default setting to reverse search every store in TA automatically.
That'll make things take some time.
Right. So it took me 5 minutes, 57 seconds to run my Walgreens scan. It took her 8 hours.
Yep.
So it's like, but that was uncovered through that, so it's even just simple stuff like that, it's like, all right, minor adjustments, but that's going to save a ton of scan minutes,
Yep.
and then we're able to look at, how we set it up, what the difference is. I got this many results. We also, part of it, we ran scans with different caches, because I recently finally spent some rubies, and doubled my cache. So I
nice.
went from a 5-day to a 10-day cache, and in an effort to save scan minutes, so that I can, I needed more volume, without, at the minimal cost.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured that was a good way to do it. So that confirmed, how advantageous the 10-day cache is, because now you could compare, the 10 storefronts, which was a lengthier search. We could actually look at scan time on a 10-day cache, a 5-day cache, a 3-day cache, and compare, see how many more scan minutes we're using, with the different settings. And I just a ton of stuff is getting uncovered, and we haven't even gotten to the leads yet.
Oh, that's
we
awesome.
have we haven't even pulled that, but it's all just this kind of configuration data that we're pouring over.
When you guys get that all figured out, I'm gonna have some questions. I'm gonna, I don't know, I may want to sit in on one of those and just be a fly on the wall, or maybe ask a question here or there, because I've got some ideas, and I just want to see if they're confirmed, or you tell me no, that's wrong.
Yeah, no, we actually talked about that. Like, this is there are a couple things that we think we know, but we'd love to be able to bounce it off you. So yeah, we should definitely do that.
Okay, perfect. All right, rule number 3: be okay with sucking. This one doesn't necessarily feel the best either, but when you first get started, or you try to learn something new, you're gonna suck. It's just the way it is. And I'm one of those people who tends to get a little frustrated when I'm having some trouble learning something new, as I think a lot of people probably are. But you didn't get up and just walk the first day you were born. You had to fall down a lot to become the proficient biped you currently are, unless you're one of those people who trips over their own feet all the time. I'm reminded of a story when it comes to this one. It happens to be about Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig, when he was in the minors, he had some troubles, and most of it was because he was nervous. He was trying to look good. He wanted to do well, and one of his teammates gave him a little bit of whiskey before one of their home games, calmed his nerves down, and played pretty well, but it started becoming a little bit more of a problem throughout the season. And it was not every other game, but every single game, he was now taking a little nip from the whiskey bottle. And one of the coaches finally caught up to him and said, man, you're going to have to be okay with making these mistakes right now. He's like, because, if you make it to the actual big leagues, like, you're not going to be able to get away with this kind of stuff. It's not, there are a little bit more rules and things like that in place. And he actually took it to heart and stopped drinking. And he was, he said, okay, I'm going to be okay with sucking. And he had an error like every inning. And then all of a sudden there was only an error maybe twice a game, and then once a game, and then, once a month. And he got better and better over time, and of course became the national hero he, was and is now. But everybody sucks when they get started. And so you have to be okay with that to be able to overcome it. And you got to stick with it long enough to overcome it. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably aren't willing to do that. And I think that's probably why a lot of people who might have had good businesses on Amazon end up walking away, because they're not okay with the learning part and thinking that this needs to be really, really fast when it's not always.
Yeah, a lot of things, a lot of things in life you have to fight the desire for instant gratification. It's those two systems in your brain. There's a constant battle. I won't try. One's the lipid system, right? I don't remember what the other one is, but basically one wants to do, one wants the dopamine hit, and the other one is a little bit more constructive with its desires. So we have to fight it, and we've talked about it with new sellers. I've mentioned it multiple times. The people think that there's like this stack that they need to buy right away as far as like tools go, and they think, and it's kind of it's the seed of thinking that, okay, once I get all this, it's all gonna click, where it's they don't realize that it's just putting in the reps, and just just get some, just travel a little bit, to where you get to the point where you can look back a little bit and say, okay, a month ago I was here, now I'm here, and then I love looking at the charts, like even on the Seller Central app, and I take a look at, the 12-month average, or, the year to dates and all that. And I compare as much as I can, or my old, my sourcing spreadsheets that I use. I'll look back and, okay, this time last year, what did I set as a goal? Like how much in sales, how much did I want to source and stuff. And because I know personally, I set goals that I don't get too aggressive with them, because I don't, a series of missed goals, it could have a negative effect, but I'll push it by a certain amount, but I feel it's attainable overall, so I think that's a good goal for my personality. So I'm able to look back on that, and it's just, you got to get the reps. It's not instant, and unfortunately it's just anecdotal, but it feels like there's a segment of sellers coming into it based on certain maybe social media platforms that people are kind of selling this as a get rich quick, which it is going to send a bunch of people into this with the wrong mind frame. So it takes some discipline, it takes some monitoring, to kind of keep that instant gratification at bay, and realize that you just got to put just put the reps in, just get the process, keep refining the process, and the long run you'll be better off for it.
Yeah. Heck, we can just say it. I won't say that people aren't trying to push Amazon or eBay or anything as a get rich quick scheme on any social media platform, but the absolute worst is TikTok. I absolutely despise when I get sucked into that app because someone sends me a funny video. I hate what it does to your attention span. And I think that's where a lot of the bad information comes, because what are you going to tell anybody in 30 seconds about any business, let alone selling on Amazon?
Yeah. So I'm so glad it was you that said it, not me.
It makes us sound like crotchety old men. Get off my lawn with that TikTok.
Like, let's check the numbers on this podcast episode and see if there's a spike of people that ended the episode right there with an okay boobers.
Right. Oh, jeez. Hey guys, wanted to take a quick second and thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
So that's these two go together. The next one we wanted to cover, the fourth habit would be impatient with action, patient with results. So certainly a compliment to the last one. It's important to be aggressive both in action and patience. You put in the work, but know that your efforts will likely not bear fruit for months or even years sometimes, and you need to be okay with that. You need to realize the farming aspect of it, and you plan it, you do things the right way, but the payoff is down the road. Not unlike, tell me this isn't unlike the that weird thing that we're getting with the definition of passive income. Right? Have you picked up on that? Like there's almost this like backlash of passive income, and people think it's zero effort, and I know technically the terms, but it's true passive income that you read about in the headlines, and you read in different techniques and methods and industries even. It's kind of it's income that you harvest later on. The workload's up front, and then you're going to collect on the back end, over a more gradual, steady period of time afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. This particular rule or habit came from, that's a Naval Ravikant quote: impatient with action, patient with results. 21st century philosopher Naval Ravikant. But I like to call it aggressive patience. I like the dichotomy of that. But yeah, this one is really important, I think, and I think it's another reason why people absolutely get out of this business, or any business really, because unfortunately there's just no way to get the results people want without being a little bit patient. So yeah,
and it echoes the Stoic thought of being forgiving to others, but being real strict with yourself. It's I think they're siblings.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Number 5 is to take small calculated bets. This is probably one of my favorite things about Amazon, or to be quite honest, with really any online business. I mean, you and I could start a blog for what, 12, 15 bucks, whatever it costs to register a domain name, and we could pick up a free theme and things like that. With Amazon, you don't have to invest $5,000 or $10,000 or 15 or 50 grand to get started, like a lot of business opportunities. I think the cheapest franchise that I'm aware of is $10,000, and that's a Chick-fil-A. All right. But I mean, essentially you're really buying yourself a job. There is, you've got to be there a certain number of hours per week. They tell you when you can be open. They tell you when you have to close, and you can't own more than like 1 or 2 locations. So you're really locked in. But with Amazon, I mean, you can essentially do whatever you want as long as you are following Amazon's rules. You could start with cheap books. You can start with clearance items. You can grow it into, a private label monster like Anchor has done. You get acquired by Amazon like Roomba just did. They started out as a private label brand, and now Amazon owns them. And you can start with $100. You can start with $50. Some people have started with no money and just sold things off their own bookshelves. You can verify that the model works, and then you can pour gasoline on that fire. And I don't know, there's not a lot of ways to do that, especially if you want a brick and mortar business or a local business. If I wanted to start a lawn service here in Florida, I'm going to need a truck, which fortunately I've already got, but I would need a trailer. I need some lawn mowers, some leaf blowers, some, edgers. And I'm going to be in at least a few $1,000s if I can find a pretty good deal on those things used. I know that I started with $100 to get started on Amazon. So it's much, much easier to be able to take these small calculated bets on yourself now that making money online is, it's not the fairy tale it once was.
No, it's easier than ever. And I started with $0. I started with my wife's old cell phone.
Oh, nice.
Sold that on Facebook Marketplace, kind of parlayed it over and over from there. So yeah, the flip side, or another way to look at taking small calculated bets is, it limits your risk as well. You can kind of limit your exposure. You're famous for saying, go an inch deep but a mile wide. And if you practice that strategy, you're not really going to take a bath on anything. It would it would take a really bad series of events to for anything really bad to happen to you. So yeah, it's a fantastic model without being a blog or having any writing skills or something. That it's still supply and demand. and it's still commerce. But it's a, there's not a real difficult entry point or jumping in point to get products sourced by you one way or another and have more eyeballs than any other marketplace in the entire world on them. It's an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's huge, especially the limiting your risk. Yeah, I like to think of it as, we get to we can place a chip on every single number on the roulette board, and they're not all wiped off every time the ball goes around the wheel, but it does make you, I don't know. And all you've got to do is like win 70% of those. Heck, you'd probably come out on top if you won 60% of them. But then as you get better, you win 70 and hopefully 80% of them, and the other 20%, it's a write-off. But it's not it's not something that's going to close your business down or ruin an entire quarter's profits because you went way too deep on a product. That is one of my favorite things, to be honest.
Yeah, we're going to get into it in a future episode a little bit more, but like when you start talking to people and people who are nervous about stuff, or price tanking is still, it's never going to go away. People are always going to be talking about it, but like when you kind of get into a bitch session and it's like, well, and it's to the point where you're not sure you're going to buy something, because you're afraid. You just have to know that things are going to tank. Everything, the profitability of everything on Amazon for the most part is finite. There's a lifespan, and it's going to sunset, and it's going to end. And you have to realize that, and so being able to take smaller bets and more of them, like you said, that's a good analogy. You're basically covering the entire roulette table, and with better odds and no zero and double zero, those pesky little slots on the wheel.
Right. Yeah, it's that is a really good conversation to have, maybe in a future episode, but there are a couple of things. There's a finite amount of time that something can stay profitable, because if it's popular enough, supply and demand is just going to come into play on everything. If an item is popular enough, the supply is going to go up. And because demand can only go so high, eventually the price is going to have to come down. The price is going to have to get depressed, once supply hits a peak. And then, of course, it may come back. Supply may dwindle and demand could stay the same, or demand could diminish along with the supply, and so the prices are always going to do something like that. But then the other thing that's finite is the amount of time that something is going to be able to be sold on Amazon. Whether it's because the company doesn't make it anymore, or people just don't want it any longer, and that's why you've always got to get new stuff. And yeah, that would be an interesting conversation to have, maybe with some numbers breakdown of products that have been around for a while, and also to see the peaks and valleys, but that's for another episode.
Yeah, so we're on to the sixth habit of highly effective Amazon sellers. This one is extremely important, in my opinion. Commit every day. I was just thinking about this earlier today, actually. It's pretty easy to get started, like we said. And of course, motivation is at its peak right in the beginning. But that motivation could disappear just as quickly. It doesn't take much to sap the gusto that you walk into this with. So it's important to commit to your goals every day and ruthlessly go after them. And what I was thinking about earlier today was, thinking about doing stuff even when you feel like you don't want to, or even when you really don't, you really don't have the motivation to do it, kind of forcing yourself to do the stuff regardless, and that's I can't think of any quotes or directly, but I know I've read it a couple different times in different versions of it. But it basically talks about the most successful people are the most consistent. And that entails doing things even when you don't feel like doing it and don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So I'm sort of in the middle of this right now. I'm on day number 10 of a cycling streak where I ride I ride a bike outside every single day. Even though the sun bad and it hurts when I look at that yellow orb and come outside of my office. But I'm on day 10 and I've got to commit to this every single morning. Because I'm at that point where my legs are starting to get really sore. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, man, it'd be really easy to say, maybe we take a day off and give the legs one extra day of rest. But no, I've got to commit to it every single morning when I wake up to get back on the saddle, back out for the ride, because it will fulfill my long-term goal. And I'm to that point where motivation is waning. First day it feels great, second day it's awesome, but I'm no longer getting the dopamine hit from just hopping on the saddle. And I'm not sure if I'm riding long enough to I don't even know if biker's high is a thing. I know runner's high is, right. But that, we could talk about the motivation myth and how it's not really, motivation only lasts for so long, and then it's your systems that are have to take over, or things have to become habits, and I mean there's all kinds of books out there that talk about this, but you've got to kind of set that goal, and then you've got to let go of the goal, and you've got to focus on the systems that are going to get you to that goal, and you've got to commit to it every single day, because it's really easy to say, well, I'm not going to source today, because I've already spent my budget for the week. And then maybe that turns into I'm going to go for a little 3-day holiday and not source for these 3 days, and then you pay for it when you're like, oh, crap, why do my sales suck? Oh, I took those days off and now I'm paying for it. Just like I'll pay for it in 2 or 3 years if I don't get on the bike tomorrow. So, yeah, that's a big one. The last and final one, number 7, is don't lie to yourself. I am guilty of this on occasion. The weight on my driver's license, I didn't just lie to myself. I lied to the government on that one too. But I thought I was telling the truth. But no, you need to know your numbers. That one's really, really important, because a lot of people who, especially in cash flow businesses, everything feels good. Credit cards getting paid, but margins may not be what you think they are. And so it's really important not to lie to yourself about that. Even if it hurts, there's always a way to fix it. Be willing to pivot if you need to. It's one of the great things about this type of business and a lot of solopreneur businesses is that you do have the ability to pivot so quickly. You don't have to wait for a board or some bureaucracy to rule, in your favor. You are the board and you are the bureaucracy. So you get to pivot as quickly as you want. And that can be things like cutting off bad inventory. It could be things like changing your repricing structure. We could go on, but it's really important not to lie to yourself about your business or your weaknesses or your strengths or anything like that. It's just going to make fixing it worse later on down the road, because, we go back to those 1% gains, over the course of a year. That's like 37x if you just get 1% better every day. Now, if you get 1% worse every single day, it's not quite as bad, over the long term. I want to say it's like a 10% decrease, but you compound that over a long enough time period, because you've been lying to yourself and not being honest about something, and then it becomes a really big issue to fix down the road. And I mean, in a past life, I have done this, pretty bad, where I've had really big mistakes to clean up. And it was, that was not a fun thing to do in a past life. And it took a long time to be able to dig out of the hole that I dug for myself, because I just was not being honest with myself. So
yeah, and that's it's important. Number one, think about this, like, if you actually know your numbers and really kind of dig into them and really find out the truth. Because if they look good, if you're only looking at them from one perspective and they look better than they actually are, not only obviously is that bad, on the surface, but think about, it's going to bring, if you're prone to kind of settling into a comfort zone, it's going to bring that about sooner. And then, the other part about this, so it'll help, and the flip side, it will help with motivation too, obviously, before you get in your comfort zone, you want to keep the motivation up and keep your drive. Another reason why it's important to know the numbers, but, the other part of it, which we've mentioned before, is this type of business, you're in charge of everything. You wear all the hats. And something that I've found personally was, and I've mentioned it before, we've talked about it. It's kind of like, okay, I want to, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm leaving the rat race. I'm quitting. I'm going full time. It's great. All my time is my own, and you say that like it's a dream come true, right? There's a romantic quality to it. But then you get in like your first few days and it's like, okay, this is what I do now. And you go, you look at your whole day and you look at your list of processes, especially in the beginning, you don't have any. It's like, so yeah, your entire day is your own. And guess what? You got to figure out how to fill it up. Like you got to know what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how long it's going to take even, and the one thing that I have problems with is there's so much, and I don't have strong enough processes, or at least firm enough, boundaries, or, like the I need to put bumpers up, like the kids bowling alley, because there's so much different stuff, but then I'm learning on top of it. So I'm throwing new things in there too. It's easy for certain things to get lost, and if I don't do them for so long, I'll completely forget. And then I have to, either relearn it if I've realized that I've forgotten to do it in a while. It's like, depending on what the task is, but think about different sourcing methods. How many dozens of different sourcing methods and tactics and strategies, could you rattle off? Say you have 15, if you made a list, do you do all 15 on a regular basis? No. I don't. I mean, if you do, that's great. I mean, sell me an e-course or something. You know what I mean? But it's like there's so much to do. It's easy for stuff to get lost, and the more, the more organized that you are, and how it relates to this is the more truthful you are about your processes and about every part of your business, the better off you'll be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this may be one of the biggest ones, because it is really easy to kind of pull the wool over our own eyes, and yeah, sales are going up, everything's fine, and seems like cash flow is good, and I'm not stressed out or anything, and unfortunately that can be, we take off those rose-colored sunglasses, and it's not so nice. So.
Well, think about it from a productivity aspect too. Lying to yourself, because that gets into like the concept of future self.
Mm-hmm.
Like the future me is a badass. Like he does so much stuff because I push so much stuff off on. It's like it's like you talking about taking that day off of cycling. It's like, man, my legs hurt. I had a little elbow issue. And I was dealing with because I'm trying to go to the gym. And it's like, man, the elbow's barking at me, and you're right. It's easy to say, a healing day is probably a smart thing to do. It's like, but and then you kind of say to yourself, like, well, I'll just go tomorrow, and there's such a disconnect between our present selves and our future self. And if anyone out there has a definitive book about future self, please let me know in the comments somewhere, because I'd love to read. I'm fascinated by the concept because I don't know, maybe because I abuse it so much, but it's we put so much on our future selves, and it's like, I don't know, I buy into it too easily. Like I'm a sucker for it, just saying, well, I'll do this today and I'll just get to that. How many shipments went to UPS a day late, because I had that conversation that, well, I'm just gonna watch this movie again, or I'm gonna watch another episode of whatever show I'm watching, and I'll just pack it up and ship it tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely.
That's lost revenue.
I mean, I can't even number the amount of shipments or the number of blog posts or social media posts or whatever it's supposed to be. YouTube videos. I mean, there are dozens, if not hundreds, that got put off to my future self, who must be the most stressed out person, ever, because he's got so much laying on his shoulders.
Yeah.
But all right, let's close up this episode with a quote, as we are wont to do. But the quote this week comes from Stephen Covey. He's the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I want to say leaders and CEOs and all kinds of different versions of that book. But his quote is, "Habit is the intersection of knowledge, or what to do, skill, how to do it, and desire, want to do." And that's by Stephen Covey. If you've never read that book, it's probably one of the first self-help books I ever read. It is a good book, little old school, but a classic, So,
yeah.
Well, I think that's it for this week, Chris. I appreciate you hanging out again, man.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
We're going to be back next week. Not 100% sure if it'll be just us or if we've got a guest, but we do have a guest we need to make up with due to the weather delay, and we're going to do that pretty soon. That's going to be a really good episode about bookkeeping, and then I think we might have some spooktacular ideas coming out for a Halloween episode. So make sure to come back and watch the episodes coming up. We appreciate you guys listening. If you do us a huge solid, make sure to like the video, leave a comment or a review wherever you might be listening to this, because it does help us and it keeps us coming back and making these shows consistently. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day, and hope you guys absolutely crush it in Q4. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share it to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.